Oh, what's this? Some sort of box? Ah, snap! This is a retro handheld. Wow, look at that. This is amazing. I needed a retro handheld. Let's put you to good use. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Hey there, how you doing? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. If you've been watching my channel for a while, then I owe you an apology. I'm sorry. I knew what I was doing and I did it anyways. I've made it my job to show you amazing retro doodads, all my favorite stuff that I love. I make these videos knowing full well that you're gonna want them and buy them and experience the same childlike wonder that I feel every single day when I play Burger Time for the 800th time on the shiny new thing. So to you, to your bank account, to your significant other who has to deal with you blowing your date night budget on yet another magically nostalgic pile of plastic and rubber membranes and circuit boards from China, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. And I'm also sorry to say that I'm gonna keep doing it. And I'm also sorry to say that I'm not actually sorry. But that brings up a good point. I brought up a good point. I'm good at that. The point is, if you've been in this hobby for a while, you probably have a whole heck ton of retro handhelds. Seriously, some of these things are so good and cheap that it's hard not to buy them, even though you have zero need for them. But like, how often do we actually need the stuff that we buy? Food and shelter? Nah, overrated. Toilet paper? There are free alternatives. Peppermint scented loofah soaps? Actually, we do need those. They're not optional. But like most things that we spend our money on, we don't actually need, right? We just want stuff and we get it. So don't go beating yourself up buying yet another retro doodad. Look, I'm a 40-something-year-old dweeb compared to most dudes my age who buy golf clubs and ATVs and boats and divorce lawyers, you know, adult stuff. Compared to that, my one vice in this world, retro doodads, as hobbies go, it's a pretty darn affordable thing in the big picture. But that doesn't solve the main problem of collecting retro handhelds. What the heck do you do with all of them? I mean, maybe a few months ago you loved this handheld, but then this one came along and replaced it. Or maybe this handheld didn't end up working for you, or this one turned out to be too small and this one was too big. Or maybe you love them all, but this is your new favorite and you just end up using that all the time because it's the newest one. Whatever reason that you have a shelf or box or bucket full of handhelds, the problem is the same. Too many handhelds that don't get used, and here you are on a TechDweeb video about what to do with your old handhelds, thinking that maybe I'll save you from this madness. And maybe I will. Or maybe I'll drag you deeper. No, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. There's no escape. Starting off with what is probably the most practical thing to do, you can sell them. Selling your old stuff is a great way to make some cash, and if you need cash, then honestly, no one can fault you for that. I mean, you spend money on these things, and if you're done with your handheld, you've had your fun, and you're ready to send it off to a future home, you can post it for sale and make back some of the money that you spent on it. You're not gonna get all the money back. Let's be real, no handheld emulation doodad is gonna go up in value, unless it's signed by TechDweeb, of course. If it's in good condition, you should get a good amount. But when I sell a handheld, I like to put it at a really low price just to get rid of the thing. The difference for me getting $50 instead of $40 or whatever isn't much, but if that means that the handheld will sell fast and also someone out there will get a good deal on a good device, I'm happy to do that. If you want to be fair, I think a good rule of thumb is if it's brand new, as in 100% perfect condition, barely touched, sell it for 80% of the price. If it's used but it's still in really good condition, sell it for 60% of the price. And if it's a bit scuffed up and maybe you don't have the box or the SD card or whatever, sell it for 40% of the price. And keep in mind that the older a doodad is, the cheaper the base price will be. Oh, and be a good seller and make sure you are completely honest with anything that's wrong with it and the condition. And for the love of all that is good, clean the device before you send it out, please. Nothing worse than getting something used on eBay with somebody else's finger grease on the screen and eyelashes stuck between the cracks and who knows what else lurking where you can't see it. If you've invested some money into handhelds, well, why not put them to work and fulfill your dream of becoming a crypto bro and use them to mine Bitcoin? I mean, sure, you'll probably spend more electricity doing this than you'll ever make back, and it's a pain to keep them all either plugged in or charged up, and I'm not sure how you'd actually do this or if it's even possible. But it's probably worth a shot, right? Oh, and the flip side of selling your doodad is giving it away. If you can part with your doodad and you don't need to recoup the expense, I can't recommend this enough. Giving the gift of retro games to someone in your life is one of the best feelings. We here in this hobby are used to these things. These retro emulation doodads that come preloaded with all the games set up and ready to rock. We know what the deal is. We know that you can play all the games from the good old Super Nintendo or Game Boy or PS1 or whatever. But most people out there have no idea that these even exist or that this is a thing you can do. And seeing their face light up when you give them a Game Boy that has all the games on it is one of the best feelings in life. So if you have handhelds and people in your life who might have played these games when they were kids, or if there's somebody maybe younger that you want to introduce to these games, then just be a magical retro game fairy god bro to someone you like and just freaking give it to them. No strings attached. And you'd be surprised when you give someone one of these, even if they're not a gamer. Chances are they did have games when they were kids and they'll love firing up Sonic or Pokemon or E.T. just like they loved back in the day and have the time of their life. Also a good way to get people to like you. And if you're like me, you could use all the help you can get for that. If you have a few handhelds and you're bored, you've got to give this one a try. Another long day pushing pixels. What's for dinner? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the same thing I made last night? Cold batteries and disappointment. Great. I'll have mine well done. Dad, can you help? I need to charge up so I can do my homework. I asked Bricky, but she won't untangle me. Maybe if you weren't running at like 2 frames per second, I'd consider it. It's not my fault I wasn't bored with Wi-Fi. I swear, I didn't have these problems back in my day. You had a game, you played it, and you liked it. Oh yeah? Back in your day, all you had was 4 shades of green and a dream. All right. Let me see the cable. I'll untangle this. I loosened it. It worked. Thanks, Dad. Yeah. Just be careful this time, all right? I don't want to have to reconfigure your RetroArch settings again. Yeah, but you do the best RetroArch settings, Dad. So, about dinner? Fine. We're ordering takeout. Way ahead of you, hun. Oh, that must be it now. I'm starving. Hey, Mr. DMG. I'm dating your daughter. Can I call you Dad? Sure. Step over here with me a minute there, son. Here's a fun one. Why not get crafty? This is the TrimUI Smart. Not the Pro, the original TrimUI. As you can see, it's a small little sort of candy bar style handheld with a screen that looks way too small for the device. Lots of people like this one, but I personally did not like it. And that's why I didn't make a video about it. It wasn't for me. But I had a hankering to get crafty and I decided, screw it. I'm gonna turn this into a test doodad and paint the thing. And I did. And it turned out all right. I mean, not the best, but it gets the job done. And as I did it, I learned some good lessons that carried me into future projects that turned out much better. I made a whole video about painting your handhelds. Check that out if you want all the best tips and stuff. But you don't need to get messy with paint to mod your doodads. There's a ton of stuff you can do. There's a bazillion sellers on Etsy that sell custom parts like buttons and bumpers and decals and shells. There are stores like Lit NXT that do these custom buttons in any color and fun stuff like these laser engraved backplates. You can also tinker around on the inside and get new button membranes or speakers or adding bigger batteries. There are lots of things you can do if you look around and do some learning. And doing it to an older handheld is great because if you break it, well, that's okay because it was just collecting dust on your shelf anyways. You've heard of food fights, right? Well, check this out. Retro handheld fights. Get you and your buddies together, put on some extra thick sweaters, helmets, and safety goggles, and have a good old-fashioned game of dodge the e-waste. TechDweeb is not responsible for bodily injury or lost save games caused by his terrible advice. You guys know that I love those home console things. You know, those Android boxes or Raspberry Pis that you can plug into a TV and it's like you have a retro gaming console, sort of like the NES Mini or whatever. And you know that video I made recently where I show you one of the best tricks that a retro handheld can do, which is to use them as a home console? Well, I mean, the logical conclusion to that and the fact that you have a handheld sitting there doing nothing is turn it into a home console. Seriously, why not? Lots of these things have HDMI out and Bluetooth, and even the ones that don't have Bluetooth usually have an OTG port, so you could at least use wired controllers, old school style. And lots of these handhelds are just as powerful as lots of the home consoles you can get. The benefit is that you won't need to plug and unplug it over and over, or reconfigure your screen or controller if you go back and forth between handheld and docked mode. You can literally just use it as a console. Heck, if you didn't care about letting the battery die, or even if you had one with a dead battery, you could just leave it on all the time. To be clear, I would not recommend using your favorite handheld as a dedicated home console. These things shouldn't be left plugged in forever because it can kill the battery, and the best thing to do with a handheld is use it as a handheld. But if you have one kicking around that can do this that you're not using like a handheld, then why the heck not do this? I know several people who have a Switch and they leave it plugged in and just use it as a console. They never bother with handheld mode ever. This is the same thing, but retro doodad style. It feels like a pretty fun way to use an old handheld, if you ask me. If you're feeling really fancy and you have hundreds and hundreds of handhelds, you could always just show off your wealth of handhelds by filling a pool with them and swimming in it like Scrooge McDuck. I mean, I'm probably not going to feel good, but swimming through coins surely doesn't feel good, and Scrooge McDuck does it, and he's a real person, so you might as well, if only to flaunt your status as a rich guy. And finally, this should be obvious, but everyone needs a reminder, even me, handhelds should be used. I know that you have a shiny new thing and that you like better than the old thing, but that doesn't mean the old thing is bad. I mean, think about it like this. There was a reason that you bought that old LDK or Powkitty V90 or Amberlick RG353P. You bought it to play games on, and it did play games. Lots of games. And they played well and they were fun. Part of the joy of handhelds is that because they're cheap and plentiful, you can get new ones often. And some might say, why would you need a new handheld? You already have a bunch. But you and I know that the reason we like new handhelds isn't because we need them or because they do more. It's because variety is the spice of life. And the experience you get playing your old favorite games is different on different devices. It's like, think about if you get a new pair of headphones. What's the first thing you do? For me, the first thing that I do is listen to my old favorite tunes so that I can hear these songs that I love that I've played a million times before, but on new hardware that has instantly made it a novel experience. The difference in hardware to us nerds is what sets them apart and makes them interesting and why we're retro doodad enthusiasts in the first place. I had this revelation recently. I needed to grab my Powkitty V90 for some reason, and as I fired it up, I loaded up a game and I was instantly like, wow, look how light it is, and the screen still looks good and it's comfortable. This happens to me all the time when I grab older doodads to show in a video for some reason and I'm reminded of how good they are. And I think the fact that they're different, that the variety is what makes these things fun. But I get that sometimes you need a little bit extra help to inspire you to pick up an older doodad when you have a shiny new one with an OLED screen or whatever. So here's a few suggestions. What about a handheld of the week? If you have like 10 handhelds, as I'm sure many of you out there do, pick one to start and use nothing but it for a week. And then after that week, move on to the next one and go through the whole family. I can guarantee that the novelty will keep it interesting, and relearning what makes each of these things tick will add a sort of metagame to your retro gaming life. Or here's something that I actually do, which is to have devices that are dedicated to a specific system. Some of my devices I'll play anything on, but on some of them I only use it for one thing. For example, my GKD Bubble is just for Game Gear. My RG Arc is just for Sega Genesis. My Powkitty V10 is just for GBA. My RG 505 is just for PSP. If I want to play games for those systems, I'll be grabbing those doodads. It's a great way to not just make sure that they don't collect dust, but to actually keep them active in my mind and remind myself why I love them in the first place. And finally, this one is a bit subjective, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but I think that just like retro games themselves, retro emulation devices have memories associated with them. And playing older doodads can bring you back to those times. They're probably not old memories like when you played Super Mario World for the first time and your younger cousin sneezed right on your SNES controller and his boogers got stuck under the D-pad and it never worked quite right after that. But those memories are still memories worth reliving. For me, whenever I grab my Pow Kitty V90, I'm brought back to Christmas a few years ago when I got an extra one of these for my cousin as a gift. And I spent all night setting it up and curating the ROM set and installing a skin for the front end so it would be perfect for him. Every time I grab this thing, I'm taken back to that night and I think about my cousin. This is what I'm talking about. You can treat these retro emulation doodads as retro things and take a trip back in time to when you got them, to the good old days, back in 2020. That was a good year, right? And finally, if you've ever had anyone in your life say, hey, if you love that handheld so much, why don't you marry it? Well, you could do that. Just marry it. There's a good chance you could find a place in the world that would actually be allowed. And then, 9 months later, honey, I'm so excited to see our new baby. What?